"She's not cleared for emergency flight operations," the chief medical officer shouted as the worst blizzard in decades buried the mountain rescue station. Outside, a family of 4 was trapped in an avalanche, their oxygen running out with each passing minute. Every certified pilot had grounded their aircraft. Too dangerous. Too impossible. But the woman in the maintenance jumpsuit didn't ask for permission. She climbed into the Medevac helicopter, fired up the engines, and disappeared into the white hell above. 43 minutes later, she returned with 4 lives that everyone had already given up for lost. Meet Dr. Rachel Kim, 34 years old, Chief Helicopter Maintenance Engineer at Rocky Mountain Medical Center, Colorado. To her colleagues, she was the brilliant mechanic who kept their fleet of Medevac helicopters in perfect condition. What they didn't know was that she held a secret that could save lives, if only they'd let her use it. Growing up in Seoul, South Korea, Rachel was the daughter of a commercial airline pilot who died in a crash when she was 10 years old. Her mother, devastated by the loss, forbade Rachel from ever pursuing aviation. "Planes kill people," her mother would say. "Choose something safe. Something that keeps your feet on the ground." So Rachel chose medicine. She became a trauma surgeon, spending 12 years saving lives in emergency rooms from Chicago to Los Angeles. But every time she heard a helicopter landing on the hospital roof, something stirred inside her, the same passion her father had carried until his final flight. At age 29, burned out from the emotional toll of emergency surgery, Rachel made a radical career change. She moved to Colorado and became a helicopter maintenance engineer, telling herself she just wanted to be around aircraft without the responsibility of flying them. But late at night, when the medical center was empty, Rachel would sit in the pilot's seats of the helicopters she maintained. She'd study flight manuals, memorize instrument panels, and dream of the day she might actually use the pilot's license she'd secretly earned 2 years earlier. She'd paid for flight training with money saved from her surgeon's salary, learning to fly at a small airfield outside Denver. Her instructor, a retired Army pilot named Captain Morrison, had been amazed by her natural ability. "Doc," he'd said after her first solo flight, "you've got hands that were born to fly. I've trained hundreds of pilots and I've never seen anyone pick it up this fast." But when Rachel applied for medical helicopter pilot positions, she hit the same wall every time. "We need pilots with emergency medical aviation experience. You're overqualified as an engineer, underqualified as a pilot." So she remained in the maintenance hangar, keeping other pilots' aircraft in perfect condition while her own skills remained unused. December 22, 3:47 p.m. Temperature, -23 degrees Fahrenheit. Visibility, 0. The emergency call came in during the worst blizzard Colorado had seen in 40 years. A family of 4 parents and 2 young children had been skiing in the backcountry when an avalanche buried their cabin. The GPS emergency beacon showed they were trapped under 8 feet of snow in a remote area accessible only by helicopter. Emergency response teams calculated they had maybe 90 minutes of air left in the snow cave their beacon indicated they'd managed to create. In the Flight Operations Center, every certified Medevac pilot studied the weather data and reached the same conclusion. Impossible flying conditions. "Wind shear at 85 miles per hour, reported Captain Stevens, the senior pilot. "Zero visibility, icing conditions that'll bring down any aircraft in minutes." "I've got 6,000 hours of mountain flying experience," added Lieutenant Rodriguez. "This storm is beyond anything I'd attempt. We'd just be adding 4 more casualties to the count." One by one each pilot declined the mission. The storm was too severe, the risk too high, the chances of survival too low, both for the trapped family and any rescue crew. Rachel heard every word from the maintenance bay, where she was performing routine checks on Medevac 7, a Bell 429 that she'd just finished upgrading with new weather radar and de-icing systems. The radio chatter grew more desperate. The family's emergency beacon was weakening. Carbon dioxide was building up in their snow cave. Time was running out like water through cupped hands. Dr. Patricia Henley, the chief medical officer, made the devastating announcement, "All flight operations are suspended until weather conditions improve. We'll have ground crews standing by, but..." She didn't finish the sentence. Everyone knew what "but" meant. The family would be dead before ground crews could reach them. Rachel wiped her hands clean, set down her diagnostic tools, and walked toward the Flight Operations Center. "Medevac 7 is fully operational," she announced quietly. "All systems green, including the new severe weather package I installed last week." Dr. Henley spun around, her face etched with frustration and barely contained grief. "Rachel, you're an engineer, not a pilot. This is an emergency medical situation requiring certified flight crew. Rachel's hand moved to the small locket around her neck. Inside was a photo of her father in his pilot's uniform, taken the day before his final flight. "Dr. Henley," she said softly, "I am certified. I have my helicopter pilot license, instrument rating, and mountain flying certification." The room went silent. After 3 years of working together, this was the first time Rachel had mentioned her flying qualifications. That's impossible," stammered Captain Stevens. "We would have known. Your personnel file says you're maintenance only." Rachel reached into her wallet and produced her pilot's license, instrument rating certificate, and mountain flying endorsement. All current, all valid, all kept secret for 3 years. "I never told anyone because I didn't want to seem like I was trying to take anyone's job," she explained. "I'm happy being an engineer. But right now we have 4 people dying in the snow, and I'm the only person in this building who knows Medevac 7's capabilities well enough to fly it in these conditions." Dr. Henley studied the certificates, her hands shaking slightly. "Rachel, even if you're qualified, this is suicide. Every experienced pilot here has refused the mission. With respect, Dr. Henley, every experienced pilot here is thinking about the aircraft's normal limitations. I know exactly what modifications I've made to Medevac 7. I know its actual capabilities, not just what the manual says." The radio crackled with another update from the avalanche site. The family's emergency beacon was now transmitting an automated distress signal, the kind that only activated when manual operation was no longer possible. Rachel looked around the room at the pilots who had decades more experience than her, at the medical staff who had trusted her to maintain their aircraft but never to fly them. "I can bring them home," she said simply. "But we're running out of time." Dr. Henley closed her eyes for a long moment, weighing an impossible decision. Let the family die, or authorize an unproven pilot to fly into conditions that experienced aviators considered impossible. "If you crash," she said finally, "we lose the family and our best maintenance engineer." "If I don't try," Rachel replied, "we lose the family anyway, and I spend the rest of my life knowing I could have saved them." Dr. Henley handed back the certificates. "You have authorization for emergency medical evacuation. But Rachel, please come back alive." Rachel nodded and walked toward Medevac 7. Only one person followed her, Mike Torres, the senior flight medic who had worked with her for 2 years in maintenance. "Doc," he said quietly, "I don't know if you can fly this thing, but I know you understand it better than anyone. If you're going, I'm going with you." Inside the helicopter's cockpit, familiar territory welcomed her home. Every switch, every gauge, every warning system had been installed, calibrated, or repaired by her own hands. She knew this aircraft's personality better than her own heartbeat. But maintenance and flying were different worlds entirely. She strapped herself into the pilot's seat, adjusted the controls, and began her pre-flight checklist from memory. All the upgrades she'd installed over the past year, enhanced weather radar, improved de-icing systems, upgraded navigation computers, were about to be tested under conditions their manufacturers never imagined. Through the windscreen, visibility was absolute zero. The weather station reported sustained winds at 90 miles per hour with gusts exceeding 110. Snow fell so heavily it looked like flying inside a milk bottle being shaken by a tornado. But Rachel understood something the other pilots didn't. She had built this aircraft to handle exactly these conditions. She keyed the radio microphone. "Rocky Mountain Medical, this is Medevac 7 requesting immediate emergency takeoff clearance. Medevac 7, you are cleared for takeoff. Weather conditions remain severe. Exercise extreme caution." Rachel pulled collective pitch and lifted off into what looked like the inside of a snow globe during an earthquake. The medical center disappeared beneath her in seconds, swallowed by the white wall of wind and ice. Flying in zero visibility required abandoning human instincts and trusting instruments completely. But Rachel had an advantage the other pilots lacked. She had personally calibrated every instrument in this aircraft. She knew exactly how they behaved under stress. The helicopter bucked and rolled like an angry bull, but the upgraded stabilization system she'd installed kept them airborne. Ice tried to accumulate on the rotor blades, but the de-icing system she'd enhanced melted it away as fast as it formed. 22 minutes into the flight, her enhanced GPS system located the avalanche site. Through the thermal imaging camera she'd upgraded last month, she could see the faint heat signature of 4 people huddled together under tons of snow. Landing was impossible, the terrain was too unstable and visibility too poor. She would have to use the rescue hoist, lowering Mike Torres down to the buried family while maintaining a hover in hurricane-force winds. "Mike, I'm going to hold position at 50 feet, she radioed to her medic. "The wind is going to try to slam us into the mountain, but the aircraft can handle it." "Roger that, document beginning descent." For the next 18 minutes, Rachel fought physics and weather simultaneously. The helicopter wanted to crash into the mountainside, but she compensated with micro-adjustments based on her intimate knowledge of how every system responded under stress. Mike worked frantically below, digging through snow to reach the trapped family. The parents were unconscious from carbon dioxide poisoning. The children ages 8 and 10 were barely responsive. One by one, Mike loaded each family member into the rescue basket. Rachel held the helicopter steady despite wind gusts that would have overwhelmed less modified aircraft. When the final family member was secured in the cabin, Rachel began the most challenging part of the mission, flying back to the medical center with 4 critical patients aboard. The return flight required even more precision. She had to fly smoothly enough to avoid injuring her patients while maintaining enough speed to outrun the storm system that was intensifying behind them. 37 minutes after takeoff, Medevac 7 touched down at Rocky Mountain Medical Center. The entire hospital staff stood in the falling snow, watching the helicopter emerge from the blizzard like a ghost materializing from another world. The family was rushed into trauma bays. All 4 would survive hypothermic and traumatized but alive. Dr. Henley approached Rachel as she shut down the engines. I don't know what that was. Impossible doesn't begin to describe what you just did." Rachel removed her flight helmet and climbed down from the cockpit. Her hands were shaking from 37 minutes of fighting forces that wanted to kill everyone aboard. "Dr. Henley," she said quietly, "I didn't do anything impossible. I just used an aircraft that I'd spent 3 years preparing for exactly this kind of mission." 1 week later, the hospital administration offered Rachel a promotion to chief flight pilot with a substantial salary increase and recognition as a hero. She turned it down. "I'm happy being an engineer," she explained. "Flying is something I can do when needed, but maintaining these aircraft is my real passion. Keeping them ready for the next impossible mission, that's where I belong." That evening, Mike Torres found her in the maintenance hangar, performing routine checks on Medevac 7. "Doc," he said, "I've flown with pilots who have 20 years of experience. None of them could have done what you did today." Rachel looked up from the engine compartment she was inspecting. "Mike, those pilots are thinking about flying. I was thinking about bringing a family home. Sometimes that's the difference between possible and impossible." She returned to her work, adjusting a rotor blade tension that was 1 degree off optimal. Because tomorrow someone else might need the impossible and she would make sure the aircraft was ready. Some people don't need titles or recognition to save lives. They just need the opportunity to use skills they've quietly developed while everyone else was looking the other way. Some people are capable of extraordinary things but choose to work in the background, making sure others can succeed when the moment demands heroism. Don't judge anyone by their job title or official qualifications, because sometimes the person fixing the machine understands exactly how to operate it when bringing people home is the only thing that matters. The real heroes aren't always wearing pilots' wings or carrying flight certifications. Sometimes they're the ones who spend years preparing for the moment when preparation meets desperation, and impossible becomes inevitable. Rachel Kim never did accept that promotion to chief pilot. She remained an engineer by choice because she understood that building capabilities and using them weren't different jobs, they were the same calling, expressed through different hands. And on quiet nights when storms rage across the Colorado mountains, you can still find her in the maintenance hangar, talking to her helicopters in the language only she knows, keeping them ready for the next family that needs to come home alive. Because sometimes the person who fixes the machine is exactly the person who should fly it when every other option has been exhausted and hope is fading in the snow.